Okay, so this is part 3 of the Illustrator demo for the infographic project. The first thing I want to show you guys is that there's a website called freevectormaps.com. Now, if you go to freevectormaps.com, you can get exactly what it says, free vector maps, a variety of styles that you can use in your projects. Now, the maps are free so long as you quote-unquote credit the site where you got the maps, which is fine because you guys are students, so in either case you would have been allowed to use them even if they technically weren't free. But there's a whole variety, so if you click like the Americas, you can get individual states, you can do North America, so you can see states with regions, single color, and then if you see down here at the trending maps, you can go to somewhere like United States with single color. So there's a whole variety of different types of maps that include different things you may need. So some have the capitals and show you where they're located, and some have the regional elements. What's really nice is these maps are better than going and getting a flat map because you can edit them and change the colors and use them in a lot of interesting ways. So let me open that up and show you what that map looks like actually. So all you would do at this point is download it. It'll come in a variety of formats. When you go to your downloads folder, you will see that you have a zipped file called, this one, US EPS 0102. If you double click that and open it, you're going to have a variety of different items in here. So the first is the license agreement that talks about how you can use them and how you can't use them for commercial projects. Not super relevant to you guys since you're students and you have some free use ability there. And then you can see I have an EPS, an AI, which was the first one, a JPEG, which is a flat image, and then a PDF, which will also open in Illustrator. So let's open up. I'm just going to grab, it doesn't matter which one I grab. In this case, I'm just going to grab the EPS and drag it to AI. Obviously, don't grab the JPEG. It needs to be one of the editable files. Now, I get an error. It says this file contains text that was created in a previous version of Illustrator. All you need to do is click OK on that. Don't worry about it. It's then going to say the document uses fonts or characters which are not available. Click OK on that anyway. Hit Open. The text is really minor. It's just their little copyright information at the bottom. So once that opens, you will have a map. Now, if you go and try and click on it, you're not going to be able to do anything. The reason that is that it's on layers, and the layers are locked. So the first layer, if I click it on and off, you can tell it's just the copyright information. I'm going to just delete that because I don't need that right now. And then I have a background layer, and I have my map layer. If I unlock my map layer, you'll notice I now can click and adjust any of these states. So I can use my arrow tool to grab a variety of states and go to my color palette and change their colors. So I can make all kinds of adjustments here and use the map itself to define what I need to define. I can move the states around. I can delete states. So if I only need like the Eastern Seaboard, I can kind of just come and delete them. I can change the strokes. I can change the color. You can see that they're all set to like gray with white, which if I want to turn off the stroke, I can turn it off. They have a little gap so you don't see it, but I could also change the color of the stroke if I wanted the stroke to mean something about the state. So I can change it to red. I can do a whole variety of different things with this map. So that's something I thought might be helpful for you guys. So I think there's a few elements you might need me to review about sort of getting this stuff together, and I think I'll try and do a little bit of demonstration using this sort of map style graphic. So I'm going to highlight everything, and I'm going to scale it down just by coming to the corner and holding Shift and bringing it down a little bit. So once you kind of have an idea of what you want to do for your infographic, you need to kind of label it up a little bit. So I'm going to kind of explain what I want to see in the labels first, and then I'll demo a few other options. I'll show maybe doing the gradient adjustments again, or if you need to see some more rotational stuff, I will help you with that. So here we go. So once again, remember you can click or you can drag your text boxes out. I'm just going to drag one out, and in this one I'm going to say kitten adoptions across the United States. Simply because if you remember when I did my research a couple classes ago, I just decided to grab adoption and euthanization information about kittens. So I can adjust my text right over here from my text panel, and there's a few things in here that might be helpful. First, that you can increase the size right here. If you hover over things, it will tell you what those different items mean. So you can see this is set the font size. This is adjust the kerning between two characters, set the leading, and set tracking. So leading is the space in between lines, if that's not something you're aware of. So if I increase that, you can see the lines open up. This can be very helpful if you have all cap typefaces or something that needs more space or less space, you can adjust it. Likewise, this is the tracking. So the tracking will affect universally the space in between the characters. That's especially important if you have an all caps typeface because you definitely will need tracking. So let me go find one as an example. It looks like Optimus Princeps is one I can use. I'm going to open my text box a little bit, see if I can get it to fit a little better. And then I am going to, actually I might cause a force break here and just break that down like that. And I'm going to increase my leading. I can just go to the drop down, increase it to like 50 and see how that looks. If I want to individually adjust the text for my more advanced designers who want to get very particular, I can click my cursor in between the characters, hold the Option key, and then use the arrow to individually move characters closer or farther away. So I've got kitten adoptions across the United States. And this is pretty straightforward. It's a little clinical looking, but that's okay. I'm going to create a second text box for the other text because I don't want to get the formatting all confused. And I'm going to add it like that. I'm going to change my typeface to something that maybe complements it. Let's see if I can find something really quickly. Maybe I'll go with like a sans serif. Let's just go with Optima for now. So I'm going to click that, change my typeface size, and then you're required to add a little bit of labeling to this infographic. So you want to explain what your infographic is about. So you want to say, this map, and it looks like I still have my tracking open, so let me turn that off, back to 0. Okay, this map compares data about kitten adoptions in the United States versus kittens, I could probably spell that out, versus kitten euthanizations, I can't spell that word, in shelters. Okay, so once you've written that, you can add more information. You know, blue represents X and this does this, and I've tried to show this. You can add more information, but for basics, I'm just going to write a short description. I'm going to bring my leading back to auto because that was way too much space. And I'm probably going to bring this down to 12 point. There's no need to have really huge type. When you're on the computer, it's instinctive to make everything bigger than it actually needs to be because we're viewing it from kind of far away. Don't make the mistake of making way too giant text. Now, something you'll notice with my text is that I have a hyphenation here. You can turn this off. If you don't want hyphenations in your type, you can go to the paragraph panel and uncheck the hyphenate key. So if that's bothering you, that's something you can change. Likewise, you can make some adjustments like centering, justifying your type, which often looks really ugly, so just be aware that only do it when it really fits. And then adjust my little text box here, and now I have that. I may decide I want this to match the color of the blue here, and I can do that as well. So now I have kind of the start here. If you want to kind of use the map well, something I would do, I'm going to move this state. I don't really like Alaska up there. Move it over here, scoot Alaska up, and then I'm going to move Hawaii to bring that down there. So if you want to use a map and you want to use color as one of your indicators, you can actually adjust your color in a way that applies to your data. So if I were to grab this blue, I could of course make a key for this and say, okay, blue equals kittens adopted, and this one equals something else. But in this case, I want to show a range of colors so we can see which states have the most kittens adopted versus kittens that are euthanized in shelters. So I'm going to grab this, make sure that I have my fill selected in front so that I know what I'm changing, and then I kind of want to show you what's over here. So if you change the percentages here, you're going to adjust your colors. What this shows is the percentages of cyan, magenta, yellow, and then K for black within each color. So if you set this all to 0, if I can grab that little item there, you're going to find out that you have gray. And you could set a range of grays by adjusting your percentage here. So if it's 82% of the kittens, if I kind of up that, I can create tints and shades within a color by adjusting just this parameter right here. It won't adjust the magenta or the yellow, it'll just be arrangements within the cyan color. So if in this state, 42% of the kittens get adopted, 42% more kittens get adopted than euthanized, which is actually probably not true, I can set that to 42. If in this case, it is 10%, I can set these all to 0, or I can use my eyedropper to select. So I could go through individually and select each state and change it, or I can grab the states. See if I can get that one right there. And I can use my eyedropper to tell them to match that color, and then I'm kind of starting off in the same place here. So now that I have those, I could adjust this as well. If I grab this color, let's see how this one looks. It's not quite the color I was going for, but let's see. I can set this to maybe like 20%. I could set this one to 30%. I could set this one to 60%. And you can see that it will darken and adjust the colors. If you want to do it in a more straightforward way without playing with the color, let me grab all these and start this over. You can get another way of doing tints and shades so long as they don't overlap. Let me just grab a new color. We'll grab this violet color. I can go to my transparency panel and adjust the transparency to get them to be more transparent or clear. This can be a problem if you have things overlapping. Sometimes it's what you want, sometimes it's not, but just be aware if they're just flat sitting there, this is the easiest way. Go to your opacity and set your different percentages. So if it was 20% of the kittens get adopted here versus 62%, 64%, I think is what I typed, versus 89 versus 30, and then maybe all of these other ones are the same. So you can get some really accurate looks to your colors by just using this sort of stuff to your advantage. Likewise, I could just grab the full map here, and maybe I'll just change the color and we'll make this map like a light blue. Not too, I can't quite decide what color I want here. Let's bring that up. Make that kind of like a grayish blue, purple color. So I have my full map. You can see by changing the color, these percentages stayed the same because technically they're all the same colors, but they're just different amounts of transparent. So to change that back, I would just need to grab the states, set them back to 100% opacity. So just be aware that even if you change the color, you may go, why is that not getting like the color like the others? It's because you changed the opacity on that. So now I have this nice light blue map. I'm going to delete that because I don't need that for a key yet. There's a couple things I can do. So I can add gradients that go across the full map. I remember I showed gradients, but let's do a quick refresher. I can grab my gradient, and all I have to do is just click it to apply it, and then I can change it. So don't worry about trying to build the gradient before, that was weird. Sorry, light's flashing. But don't worry about trying to build a gradient before you've done anything else. You can always just sort of change your colors later. So if I just grab any color blue, I should be able to then adjust whatever I want out of this. So let's see if I want to make it that color blue, and then I want to make this something else. It looks like I have I deleted some swatches and they're not there, but that's fine. I'll make it pink. No, that's really bad. Let's make it yellow. And then if you want to add more colors to your gradient, that's really easy to do. All you have to do is click right below, and it will add whatever color is right at the point you clicked. You can then change that color. All you have to do is double click to make a new color adjustment, and you can delete them by just dragging them away. And now something that's kind of neat you can do, if I were to set this to like pink and then create another one of the yellow and another one of this thing and then bring them in really tight like this, it'll actually kind of create like a bar that I can then use to kind of map across the gradient. So that's, I mean, you may or may not use something like that, but it's something you can do. So what I might do, let me delete that and do it kind of a really efficient way. If I wanted this pink, like a pink line in the gradient to indicate something in the percentage, all I have to do is click that and tell it what percentage location to go to. So these kind of things like gradients obviously work best when you're doing something with percentages or amounts out of 100. It's kind of the best way to use them. But if I want to say that the blue is kittens that get euthanized and the yellow is kittens that get adopted, and I want to show the difference in comparison with kind of a line here, all I have to do is say, okay, so let's say 60% of the kittens were, or 67% were euthanized. If I set that to 67, it will move that to 67. I can then grab these little bars here, and it will kind of trap in that gradient into like a more distinct bar. I could then, of course, even make it a little sharper by really pushing this color in by clicking a new yellow and kind of doing something like that. And then I sort of have an indicator, and I could change that for every state. I could move the bar different across the United States. So in this one, let's say if I scoot this over, you'll see it kind of breaks away, so I probably would wait to create these elements until I was ready. But maybe this state it's like this. And in this one, it's like this. And in this one, it's like that. So I could go across, oh, I accidentally deleted it. If you accidentally ruin it, all you gotta do is go click your state that got messed up, use your eyedropper, and grab a similar one. And you can see it copies it exactly. So you could then move things around, get them where you need them to be, and adjust them. So each state could have a completely different gradient that's telling me some information about it. I could also apply this gradient across the entire United States by simply selecting my gradient tool, selecting all the objects, and dragging the gradient all the way across. Now in this case, these ones got a little messed up because they weren't part of the group. They're a little different. But if I just hit them select with the other, they'll match. So I could compare the United States as one graphic by saying 50% of the United States does this and 50% does this, and keep that little bar. Or you could just delete the bar altogether. There's no reason it has to be there. It could be a nice soft gradient as well. So if I grab that and then adjust the gradient, it could be something like that. And you could then make the adjustments with this little slider. And you can see the slider can be moved a certain percentage as well. So that's a great way to use that. Yes, question?
How did you get the color to the gradient instead of black and white?
How did I get the color to the gradient instead of black and white? That was the question. So when you first create an object, let's click out of everything so we can see if it'll pop back up as black and white. I'm just going to have color right there. When you first open the gradient panel, if it comes black and white, and I come up here to gradients, a lot of times the gradient you recently used will already exist there, but let's say, it looks like we don't have any of the sample ones. If it's just black and white, I'll just make it black and white so I can emulate what happened. And it's like this, and you want to change the colors. There's a couple ways you can do it. In your swatches palette, you can see I don't really have any swatches here, and that's because that's how this document was set up, the map, when I opened it. I can add new swatches to it by finding colors I like using my color selector.
I don't have a swatches.
You do. It's under Window and Swatches. If any of your palettes that you see me using are not there, go to Window. This is where all of the palettes are. So once you have your swatches palette, if you go make your colors, you can actually just drag them over to the swatches palette and they'll exist there. So if there's a few colors you know you want to use and you don't want to keep trying to make the same yellow 20 times, just create the yellow and drag it over to your swatches. Then when you come to your gradient and you apply your black and white gradient, apply it first, all you need to do is double click your sliders and then you should have a couple options pop up. You should be able to click from your swatches or be able to slide around. Now, if your slider is set to pure black and white and you don't see color there and you can't get it to go to color, like you only have one slider and it's just black to white, go and apply any swatch and then come back and you can make the adjustments you need to make. So putting the colors in your swatches is obviously the easiest way to get your colors on your gradients, but you simply just double click your sliders and then make whatever color you want. If you really like your gradient and you want to save it, you can do the same thing. So if this is the gradient you want to keep so you can apply it later, just drag your gradient to the swatches palette from right here. So that's kind of a refresher on how gradients can be used to create some efficient data imagery here. So I can select this. If I double click, sometimes if I reapply the swatch, I can get it to apply individually to all the states again. I might have to select them one by one. But either way, I can make them solid, come back to gradient, and then I should be able to apply it. There we go. So now the states are reapplied with individual gradients on each state, and I can make adjustments and changes there. I know it's really bright and neon and kind of hard to see from that projector, but let's do something like that. Okay, so there's my gradient state. So that's kind of the map data. Let's go back and let me show you some other ways you might be able to use this information. So let's make our map solid again. We'll make it a medium gray because this time, I accidentally selected the wrong part. Let's just grab this. They kind of want to stay as gradients. Let's go back to a solid, color, and then select. So sometimes selecting is not as easy as it looks, but okay. There we go. So now I have a nice solid map. It's just a gray map. Everything's ready to go. I'm going to go back to my layers and I'm going to lock that layer with the map. I'm going to create a new layer and then I'm going to maybe instead I want to plot some points on my map to show some different events that occurred at different places. So if you have a single state or something of that nature, it's really easy to sort of just drag things out to where they need to be. So let's say I want to show Maybe this won't be kitten data, it'd be something else. I'm not really sure. Maybe it's like UFO sightings in the United States or something, and I want to kind of show where there's a lot of them. What I can do is grab my ellipse tool. I'm going to change my color. And I can just start I can draw these ellipses and change their size to indicate the amount. So I can go to transform and tell them to be different widths and heights. So if I want this one to be 20 pixels because there was 20 spots or 20 views, I can select that and it will be 20 pixels. If the next UFO sighting there was 50 UFO sightings, I could grab this transform and go to 50. This is currently locked, so then it'll change it like that. So I can actually use the transform panel to make the sizes match my numbers. Now, if you don't like how solid these are, all you have to do is select your circles, go to your transparency, and set them to multiply. And that way it's hard to see on the projector, but now the white lines of the states show through and we can kind of see what's happening. So I could then plot this a bunch of different places. So maybe there's like tons of UFO sightings right in this area, but maybe there's not very many on the East Coast and there's only like a few. And so I'm able to change kind of sizes here. Maybe there was 2 there and there's 1 in Florida. This also could be like outbreaks of a disease or rare items that were found or, you know, areas of social change or protest or something of that nature. So there's a lot of ways you could play with that. But what's nice is it just starts to look really elegant on the map when you do it like this. You have an easy way to add your data in by changing the sizes of the circles. So if you don't have percentage data, you could do this and use the size. So if there was 78 or 155, you could easily just click this, transform, tell it to be 155 pixels, and it will make it really big. So that's a lot bigger than maybe you want. If you find after you've done that they just feel too big, you want them to be smaller, just scale them all together. They'll maintain the difference in their size when you scale them down. So then you could kind of play with the data. Maybe that's how it looks.
I just found I was trying to look for a map on
Free maps,
but they didn't have anything specifically for our area. So I just went to Wiki, it's like a Pedia, and they had free downloads
of their maps.
Of the maps
Okay.
that I was interested in.
Apparently, Wikipedia also has downloads of the free maps for those of you who are listening to my voiceover at some later time. Yeah, so that's kind of a great way to do it. So this is a really easy way to create. Anywhere you can find maps is a useful way to do it. If you had needed to use just the counties of our area, you could have downloaded the Virginia with the different counties maps and just deleted the other counties. If you need something even more zoomed in like the city, that's when you have to sometimes trace your own map. So if, let's say you did need to trace some streets, I could go back to Google and I could go find like a street map of Hampton Roads. You can tell my caps lock is on. And I could trace this map. So like if I wanted to grab this map, I could just use the map as is, of course, but if I wanted to do something a little different, let's say I just hide those layers, I can copy and paste things into Illustrator. I don't suggest doing that a lot of times because sometimes it'll be really low pixel, but because I'm just tracing this, this is fine for this purpose. I can then create a layer on top, lock the map layer, and then I could use my pen tool to trace the road. So if I just wanted to trace these like few orange major highways, I could easily take my pen tool, set it to stroke, maybe bump up the stroke to a little bit, and just follow along the map. Just clicking along the map anytime there's kind of a curve. You kind of drag a little bit to get your curves happening. Oop, definitely screwing up the bridge tunnel there, or the bridge. And just kind of follow it along. So you can get some, take a couple minutes to make your map, but it won't be too complicated.
Okay, one more time for the website that you went to the first time.
freevectormaps.com. It's also already an e-companion in the Webleyography. So if I highlight this, I'll leave that like that. And then maybe I'll trace another line here. Follow Newport News. And then maybe one final, or well, 2 more highways. We're almost there. There we go. And this is only for those who are doing map data. There's other ways you can do the data, which I'll walk. So there we go. Now I have a road map that's like pretty much ready to go. All I would have to do is label the roads. If I have to fix one, just take my direct selection tool, my white arrow, and adjust a point. If I need to smooth a couple points out that got a little wonky, go to my smooth tool, which is under my pencil, and you can just smooth stuff out if stuff gets a little too weird. But for the most part, roads are really easy to trace because even if they look a little wonky, they tend to still look how they're supposed to look. And then, of course, I could go to my free vector maps and grab the state. So let me go grab my state from my other area here. Let's just grab Virginia. I'm going to copy Virginia. I'm going to unselect, and then I'm going to paste it on this layer and make it big. Let's make it big enough for this map. Rotate it a little. And then I could even like just put this behind. I'm hitting command and then the left bracket to kind of push it behind. And I could superimpose my map on another map. So I could, if I needed to trace the roads and I didn't want to have that ugly sort of MapQuest map and look so obvious, I could just trace the roads and then adjust them here. So let me grab all of them. They're all here. Now, I want to show you something that'll happen. So let's say I want to scale these down to Hampton Roads, which is right here. It's obviously not as big as the state. Watch what happens when I scale. You'll see that the lines got really fat and thick, and that's not what you want. I'm going to hit undo. And what I can do to fix that is say, okay, lines, don't be lines anymore. You need to be shapes. And that way they'll scale down. And you do that by going to Object, Path, Outline, Stroke. They now become shapes, and now watch when I scale them down, they'll maintain their line thickness. So just a little fact, you can actually, when you tell things to scale with transform, you can tell them to maintain their effect or scale the effects. But I find this is really just the easiest way. So I could then zoom in, kind of do that. There's my map right there as it looks. And then I could even kind of grab all this and resize it bigger. So I may have to make it huge, but it's easy to do.
Yeah, did you just download them?
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So then once you click this, so I could actually crop the rest of this off, but ultimately, and it would help if I could have found a slightly like smaller map and not had to use this tiny stay in and make it huge. But ultimately, there you go. So now I have my map ready to go. I could trace more elements. I could show, you know, some different landmarks or whatever I needed to do. Maybe in this case, my data information is about water, so I actually just want the map to show from here to here, and then lock that layer, and behind that layer create some water. So I can do that by taking a rectangle tool, and this is kind of how you change your background color. It's the only way to really do it, is to grab that, and then I could do all kinds of cool stuff in here to show water information. I could add more gradients. I could create water flow lines using the brush tool and sort of draw those. Let me change the color so you can see it. So I could, you know, create data this way and show some different elements. I could also use some transform items here. So let me show you kind of a few more things you can do with the transform tool. So maybe this is like hurricanes, and I want to showcase like hurricanes. So I could obviously do different hurricanes, and then the magnitude of the hurricanes could be different sizes, kind of where they hit. I could then use gradients to show the damage that the hurricanes cause on the map. So there's like so much you can really do. So let me show you two quick features of ways you could divide up this map. I'm going to lock my water now. So let's pretend those are hurricanes and this is Hampton Roads, and I want to show damage to the coastline on this map. Now the problem will be, if I want to do that and I click this and I add a gradient, it's going to apply to the whole map. If you want it to only apply to a section, you need to break up the shape. And this is an easy thing to do. It's much easier if you have a tablet, however, but it's still really easy. All you have to do to break up your map shape is take your scissors or your knife tool. Knife tool is better for a tablet. Click your shape and then draw a line where you want to cut the shape. It's like kindergarten. Like you just be like, okay, I want to cut off this whole section to show the coast damage. So I'm going to just draw with this shape. And it's actually broken up my shape. You'll notice now when I click, this is its own shape. I just sliced it off the other shape. So now I could actually click through my map like this and say, okay, so the most damage happened here. Duh, because it's on the coastline. Minimal damage happened farther along. I'm going to reselect this shape here, take my knife, and say, okay, so there was some damage along the areas where there was river, but not so much elsewhere, and maybe kind of like that. I could then select that shape, color that a different color, and then this could be its own color. Maybe it'll be, no, that's ugly. Okay, there we go. Oh, that's even worse. Ah, hideous. Okay, let's pick a new color. Let's maybe we'll make that green. So it's like a stoplight kind of thing. So then I could divide up my shapes that way. So the maps, there's so much you can do with them. So if your data lends itself to map data, play with some of these techniques. You can use gradients on the individual sections of the map. You can slice them apart using this knife tool. The scissor tool works very similarly, except that it's a little easier to use with a mouse, but it's straight. So if I want to cut a shape, I have to click from one edge to the next edge and it will cut it, but it can be problematic. You can see that it should have broken that right there, but it cuts in straight lines. So the knife tool allows curves, straight line requires that it goes from one point to another point across the map. But yeah, so you can divide them up, you can change the colors, gradients, overlays, add shapes on top, you know, draw your own elements onto the map. There's so much you can do. So that's kind of an intro to the maps. Let's eliminate those layers quickly. And then let me show you once again a few of the things you can do with the transform tool along with the blend tool, which I did show last class, right? Did I show the blend tool? Maybe?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just making sure, trying to remember. But I think I showed snap to spine and all of that, so you can actually have things trace along a timeline. Here is something else you can do. So I need to create a new layer that's visible. I'm going to create a circle with a stroke and no fill. And let me show you a couple ways you can make adjustments here. So this stroke is really small, so let's make it much bigger so you can really see it from back there. So I have my circle, I'm going to have another circle, and I'm going to show you a couple different ways we can really play with transforming these circles. I'm going to grab the first one, and I'm going to go to Object Transform. So I know we went over this, but if you go to Transform, Each, you can then transform a lot of properties at once. So you could scale the object up and move the object over. In this case, I'm saying scale up 10% for each step, and then horizontally move 8 pixels. Let's make it 15 pixels. Rotation doesn't really matter, so I'm going to set that back to like 0. And then I'm just going to, I can see preview on and off, what it's going to look like, and I'm going to click copy, and then I can just keep hitting Command D, and it's actually creating this sort of like tunnel effect. So that could be a really great one for hurricanes, if I was doing that hurricane data, and then like a level 3 hurricane could be 3. And then I could transform another one, do the same transformation object. Because I copied it over, it lost that transformation, so I got to go to transform each again. The data's still there. Click OK. Oops, I forgot to hit copy. Copy. That's a level 4 hurricane, and then maybe this one would be a level 5 hurricane. And so you can actually use these to sort of show some cool stuff. F5, or those are tornadoes, but you get the idea. So that's one way. Now, another thing you can do with that object transform is you can actually change the shape of the object. So if I scale this down and this gets wider, so let's say it gets skinnier and then taller, I can preview that. So it can actually change shape and then also rotate and also move. So this is going to look probably really ugly, but just to show you what's going to happen, you can have all kinds of different things sort of change as it moves forward and back. So it's getting skinnier and longer and changing. As you remember, we can do sort of those spiral shapes by just having the objects rotate. So I can make this oval. I just like ovals. Circles don't really work because when you rotate them, they stay circles. But an oval or a rectangle, remember you can use with rectangles too, will rotate in a way that looks kind of interesting. So if I grab my rectangle, object transform, and just click rotate, I can say, okay, I want you to rotate by 7 degrees because each increment is 7 for some reason, and then hit copy, and then work my way around and create some interesting sort of effects that way. So that'll, and then of course I could select the ones I want to select. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then change their color. Oops, wrong thing right there. And change their color so we can compare, and then also use my transparency to set them to multiply so we can actually see kind of what's happening. You get some really beautiful looking stuff. Sometimes it's not really clear what's happening, which isn't always the best choice. But I mean, that's a really cool looking thing, whatever that might be. It looks like a weird eyeball. I don't know. There's a lot of ways you can play with it. One thing, if you're going to do this and you want to divide them in colors, the trick is to get to where you need to change the color and then change it. So watch this. If I go to Object Transform, Rotate, and I set this to 15, and I hit Copy, and I hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and now I need it to change color. At this point, what I would do is just create one more, change the color, and then continue to transform the rest of the way. That way you don't have to go try it. Like once you've already made this, it's really hard to select objects within it. So if you need to change colors midway, stop, change the color, and then just keep doing the transform. It's a weird little thing, but it kind of can make a difference. So here's one. So the same effect creates completely different looking objects. And that's okay. That's part of the data visualization process. So use the numbers themselves to help define the way these sort of things are going to function. So use the transform. And if you kind of fudge it a little bit and make it up, it's not that big of a deal. Like for the hurricanes, did I need to get the exact percentage size of the hurricane? No, I could just use relative sizes to show which ones were more severe and less severe on my map. But hopefully that helps a little bit with the map data. Is there anything else anyone needs to see right now regarding this? No, everybody pretty clear? All right. So that's kind of where we're going, somewhere this direction. Make sure you label things, that you create sort of like a little key that tells me what's going on. And then when you're done, you just export. So that's the end of that. Next time, when the project is due, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you exactly how to put everything neatly into a PDF and export it for me. So you'll have time in class to gather all the files together, including all your process work. All right.